This is Dune Spice Wars, a brand new real-time 4X strategy game blend, and as you can see, it's one that's set in a very dangerous world. A well-replicated narrative-driven world in a good, solid 4X strategy game base, if not a little dangerous around the edges. My name is Jumbo Pixel, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing Dune Spice Wars, which has just released in early access. This is not a sponsored review at all, however the team behind Dune Spice Wars, Shiro Game and Funcom, did give me early access to a preview build, so thank you for that. That has enabled me to provide this review. Let's begin. First and foremost, the basic premise of Dune Spice Wars, set heavily and inspired heavily by Northguard, another game from Shiro Games, is to capture and harvest the spice, the crucial resource of the world. You start in one city and in a very dangerous world full of sand and giant worms, rebels and other houses vying for control of spice. Your objective is to move out, capture the villages or outposts, develop them, defend them, and ultimately harvest the resources of the world, the spice, to pay off your emperor or overlord in tax and gain supremacy of the world. Dune Spice Wars in many ways to me feels a lot like other real-time strategy games, like Age of Empires, for example. Not in the scale of combat, but a little bit in the unit mechanics, in developing cities, placing these little buildings like this. There's also some real inspiration and feel to Stellaris here as well, not just because of the sci-fi sort of 4X real-time blended genre that it finds itself in, but also through the catches and blitzes of diplomacy, of espionage that fuel Dune Spice Wars. Also unit supply and logistics, in this case playing out in a harsh desert world, and in Stellaris it is of course spread across the universe. The actual gameplay itself in Dune Spice Wars is really interesting as well. The houses here, you can see one of them, are very carefully thought out and inspired by the world of Dune. However, if like me you're heading into this as a relative Dune noob, you won't be put at a disadvantage by that. Although watching the film or reading a book could be in your best interest if you really want to harness this world. It's not at all a requirement. The gameplay itself plays out in that really, as I say, heavily inspired by Northguard element of territories, of having one central city, and then spanning out across these villages or outposts to collect them for their resources, although of course in Dune Spice Wars it is really all about the spice. The rest of the resources in this world, while they are nice, don't really provide a huge amount of benefits. Across the board, it's the spice that you want and it's the spice that you need. You'll spread out and try and capture villages that kind of acts as outposts or satellite towns. Each faction or house will have its own bonuses and ways of achieving this, but by and large it will be through military advancement and development that will let you move out, capture the villages, and then build developments onto them. It's supported by a good, robust trade system that is probably the most straightforward of the diplomacy, of the Council, of the World Congress and geopolitical systems in this game. It's a very easy one to use, supported by a few high-level treaties. Each faction has certain resources that it will favor or absolutely not want a bar of, and it plays out well in the game's setting. Overall, you'll then look to develop your cities and settlements, namely through economy, through military and society, or as the game will often label it, through economy, military, and statecraft. Statecraft being everything from the influence that's fueling these votes in the Landsraad sort of geopolitical voting system. More on that in a little bit. But also it'll impact your research, effectively your science, allowing you to unlock more developments in the development or tech tree, and loads of other things that are involved in statecraft as well. The overall world, of course, that Dune puts you in is one of intrigue and espionage, and this system is very important to that. You unlock throughout the game agents that can be put on counterintelligence to protect you, or more importantly, assigned to factions and houses within the game. This will build your intel score, allowing you to unlock operations, one-time boosts or penalties that can be applied to your friends or foes, strengthening their units, weakening yours, applying different promotions or benefits to supply and territories within the world. It's a very interesting way to take a nuanced, balanced council system, a system of espionage, of gaining diplomacy points and intrigue, and applying real-world benefits, these sort of one-time benefits that you might be sort of comfortable with applying to massive online multiplayer games or MOBAs, right? You have these one-time effects: reduce enemy supply by 20%, reduce enemy power by 20%, make your units invisible for 2 days in-game. They're very nuanced, they're very varied, and as you move through Dune's game, supporting your overall objectives, connecting the spice and expanding to grab more territories, supported of course by this awesome, nuanced military system and expansion system, you'll be able to build up your diplomacy and then have real world impacts, leading right the way through to crazy things like winning the game by assassinating the leader of another house. It can get wild. And the crucial thing here, and the thing that I want to highlight as I connect my spice, harvest it, recall it, assign more crew to it in this game, and in the varied gameplay that you're seeing in the background, is that Dune Spice Wars does a good job of balancing the military, expansionizing elements of the game, alongside the nuance that each faction can provide. Watch here as I set up a thumper and ride a giant worm under the earth to launch a surprise military attack. All of this is balanced with a diplomatic system, a system of voting with powerful impact that likely House Atreides or the very evil Hark House will benefit from, more so than the Freemen will. They're inclined to using their military, their trade perhaps as well, with the smugglers to get their benefits. But either way, Dune Spice Wars does a good job at balancing the overarching systems. We could perhaps think of them as economy, military, and statecraft. It balances them well, and it balances its victory conditions well as well. We're ultimately working towards hegemony. You can see me mousing over it there in the top right. It's the score in-game, and it's rewarded from all sorts of things, from excess water supply that you might be able to take advantage of as the Fremens, through to military victories across the board, the total number of units you've destroyed, as well as outposts or villages you've connected. It's a great system, and it's a balanced system for achieving victory, in perhaps a similar way that humankind looks to achieve victory through fame, rather than civilization's one-off approach, build a spaceship, win the game. Dune Spice Wars is a brilliant game, but it's not without flaws. It's important to note, of course, this is an early access version. We expect to see more in the future, more playable factions, multiplayer, which I think could be a really key strength for this game moving forward. Also expect to see things like modding support in the future, so it's hard to judge it too harshly, but initially some things that I found is it does suffer from something that games like this also suffer from, similarly, a downward spiral. If you start to spiral out of control, it might just be game over. Time to write it off and try again. It's an element to the way that this game feels, rather than necessarily being a good or bad thing. It could definitely use from some more polish. Performance was overall pretty good, although I would expect it to perform a little better on a system like mine. I had no issues at all. One thing gameplay-wise that it could really benefit from would be better tooltip integration. While the tutorial is nice, it's stripped back, it's straightforward, really I could use tooltips right from the very get-go, from selecting my house and my operators. Little mouse-over ones, kind of like Civilization or Humankind, but I think really a Crusader Kings-inspired tooltip system could benefit Dune Spice Wars a lot moving forward. That being said, the relatively restricted command and control style of unit combat that applies to the number of units and military that you can have overall, and the map and the real core focus of Dune Spice Wars around that key resource of spice helps build a beautiful world, a balanced world, and an interesting one, filled with dangers that I think, at its price point, you'll really enjoy. Thanks for watching, and do stick around for more Dune.